Lunch and Learn, and this is Drew. He's going to present a brief history of digital advertising.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining, guys. As suggested, today we're going to be walking through a brief history of digital advertising. A quick background on where I come from. My name is Drew Trombley. I first started my career in advertising, actually on the print side of things with Gannett, selling print ads. Then moved over to their digital unit, helping with Career Builder. From there, I joined a company called Double Verify, which does ad verification, fraud prevention, and analytics measurement. Then moved forward to a programmatic video company called Brightroll, which was acquired in 2015 by Yahoo. From Yahoo, I made the move to a company called Placed, which is location attribution measurement, measuring the impact of digital advertising on the real world, which was acquired by Snapchat in the June of 2017. And from there, I brought my advertising and digital skills to the Fuel team to help bring a much more rounded view of the digital ecosystem to the team here. So just to dive in quickly, a very brief history of advertising at its purest form. Print, television, radio, all of that really started with the same concept of getting the right brand message in front of the right person at the right time. And how that was originally executed was an advertiser would contact an agency. When the agency would come up with a creative, decide exactly what that message is that they're trying to portray, and then from there would individually contact all the various publications on a very contextualized basis of what they're looking to reach. If Ford was looking to push out a new truck, they would call very male-skewed publications, whether that's radio spots or television channels or various sections within newspapers and magazines. So that is really how all of advertising originally was executed. An advertiser identifies what their message is and then tries to find the most contextualized place that they can place their brand message and their advertisements in. What that means and one of the problems with that is it is a very manual basis. So taking a quick look throughout the history of advertising, and those of you who have seen Mad Men, the concept of a martini lunch is where a lot of these deals were brokered. It was a lot of relationship-based selling. Again, you can only print so many pages or put out so many spots in a radio ad. So a lot of it was very manual and very hands-on transactions. But then in the early 90s, we really started to see the introduction of the internet, and from the internet, and adoption by the people means that there's a lot of more opportunity to serve digital ads. So in September of 1993, the first clickable ad was sold via Global Network Navigator to a Silicon Valley law firm. Flash forward a few months later, in October 1994, AT&T buys the first banner ad on Wired. Again, Wired was a print magazine, but now they're buying a digital version of that. In July 1996, we really start to see the evolution of the first digital metrics. Before, it would be X amount of pages or time spent or viewership based on Nielsen at home. But now you're starting to see the introduction of new metrics. So the first pay-per-click campaign came out in July of 1996. But there was one major blocker with all of these. They were still being executed the same transactional way in the same manual transaction way that print, radio, magazines, television had all been executed. So what did that mean in the early days of digital? It just meant a new medium and it meant more martini lunches. But then the concept of the ad server came in, and from the ad server, the ad network. So what does that mean for an advertiser or for a publisher? It means that they now have the access to aggregate their demand or aggregate their supply around like-minded content. So for the example of Ford trying to sell a new truck, instead of having to individually go out and work with 10 to 15 different publishers, or 10 to 15 different digital publishers or magazines, the ad network really was a way to be kind of a one-stop shop for many different publishers. So in this case, they would have gone out to a very male-skewed ad network or a very automotive-skewed ad network. So they can then place their ads and go to one spot that then distributes them to many different like-minded demographics or like-minded content. So that's really when we started to see the ability to have more choices and opportunity, and really where the ad tech ecosystem started to develop. Also during this time is when you start to realize that there's need for third parties. In the traditional media formats, there really are only a few players that could really come in and measure the effectiveness. Nielsen's been doing it for TV for a really long time. There's other third parties. There's sending of physical tear sheets. One of my first duties as selling print ads was going and sending the actual paper and cutting out the bottom, below the fold, right-hand page of page 6 for advertisers. So this is how verification was done in the physical traditional media, but now you have it going on instantaneously digitally. So really the layer of verification and third-party measurement services really started to blossom with the introduction of the ad server and the ad network. Pausing there, we see this very transactional, buy-ahead, IO-based, insertion order-based transactions that have been going on, all bought ahead, planned ahead. Again, not too much different than what had been taking place in traditional media, but all of a sudden programmatic entered. What exactly is programmatic? The CEO of Media Math describes it as the use of technology to automate processes and use math to improve results. It's really the future of marketing available now. Others is really looking at it as a way to layer in data and just make smarter buys and buy your audience on an individual basis, leveraging as much data as you possibly can. And this is all automated and data-driven. And really, this is as you now browse the internet and see ads follow you or based on your browsing history, this is all being driven by programmatic. And the mechanism that drives most of programmatic and probably the most fundamental transaction approach is what we call real-time bidding. And it's really just taking me as a user in the fraction of a second that I hit play and an ad shows up between me, or I go to a page and the display ad pops up, or I'm on my phone and an in-banner, in-unit ad shows up. With programmatic, the process of real-time bidding is giving many advertisers the opportunity to bid on you, a user, in the time it takes for that ad to load. So if I've been visiting Ford for the last 2-3 weeks, and Ford says, you know what, Drew, he really shows a lot of interest. He's super valuable to us, so they're going to bid more aggressively. Whereas someone like in maybe an Amazon page I've been looking at, the cost per item might not be as aggressive, and it might be a lower cost of acquisition for them, so they're going to bid a little bit lower. So what does that look like? It's really what's driven by called a second price auction, which means that out of all the advertisers that are bidding on me in the fraction of a second that I look at that page, or I load that video, or I'm opening up my phone, or I'm on my connected device at home, in the fractions of a second that ad is being served to me, all of these advertisers are bidding on me based on what they know about me. They're leveraging data, they're using automated tools, they're leveraging different algorithms to say, hey, this is how much we value him, and this is what we're willing to pay for him. So second price auction is taking all of those bids, and who is determined as the winner is what's called a second price auction, but it is delivered to the highest bidder at 1 penny higher than the second highest bid. So let's say buyer 1 says, Drew, at this particular time on this particular content is worth $10 to us. Buyer 2 says, you know what, Drew has a little bit more higher value for us, and our algorithms and our automated processes say that he's actually worth $14. So in this 2-bidder scenario, buyer 2 would win me, the user, or my ad impression at $10.01. Again, 1 penny higher than the second highest bid. Now, a 2-buyer situation is the most simplest form. There's tons of different auction mechanisms between waterfalling and giving different priority based on who you are, and some companies may have upfront deals, so they actually get the first view at me. All of that aside, second price auction in RTB or programmatic is the most fundamental and really the building block that the ecosystem is built on top of. But programmatic, just like traditional media, just like the earliest forms of digital media, is fragmented and has problems. Today, users are consuming content everywhere, whether they're watching a TV show and looking at their phone, or at a sporting event and checking out their mobile device, or they're watching on their connected device, or they're watching on their traditional linear television. There's so many different ways to consume media today. And what does that mean for advertisers? It means that they have a lot more options to choose from. This is what we call the Lumascape, and this is really a very, this is actually a simplified version of some Lumascapes that you've seen, but the Lumascape is really just a chart of the ad tech ecosystem. On the left side, you have your advertiser or your marketer or whatever the product that's being sold. And through the channels, you'll see that it goes to an agency, it goes to various trading desks, it goes through a DSP, it goes to a network, it goes to supply side. While it does have challenges, programmatic is here. Both sides of the equation, the supply and demand side, are buying into programmatic. It's not going away. And again, taking a look here, this is a really crowded space. The big thing, anyone you talk to in the ad tech space, they talk about the Lumascape and they just say it's an eyesore. There's too much going on. It's really hard to figure out what makes a company in one bucket different than the one in the other. And some of these companies are in multiple channels. So what exactly does everyone do and how do we make sense of it is kind of an ongoing battle with ad tech. So really just to simplify that ecosystem and to take it into three sections, the buy side, the sell side, and the kind of third-party measurement. We have here just a typical life cycle is you have an advertiser who then will leverage an agency. And some of those agencies are purely creative. Some of them are purely media buying. Some advertisers are skipping out on the media agency and trading desk altogether and going directly to the demand side platform. So on the buy side, you really have those trying to figure out what content do they need to be on, what data sources do they need to leverage, do they have their own cookies, do they need to go out and buy from a third party, do they need to measure for fraud, do they need to measure for viewability. All these things are being decided on the buy side. With the DSP, the demand side platform, the automated software layer, it is software as a service for buying media. So they're going to pick a DSP, there's a whole bunch to choose from, and that's what's going on the buy side. Figure out the content, figure out the data strategy, figure out exactly who, what, when, and where they need to get in front of, and what tools they're going to use to do that for. On the supply side, it's really about a publisher owning their content. How do we make as much money and maximize our returns on our content? If a viewer comes, we want to get that viewer in front of the advertiser that will pay the most for them, that's most valuable to that specific advertiser. So that's what's going on the supply side is, which SSP partner do I choose, do I work with? Do I go directly to brands? Do I carve out some of my inventory and make it programmatic? Do I do 100% programmatic? Do I only sell direct to advertisers? The supply side has a whole bunch of figures going on. And then as I mentioned before, there is this layer of third-party supplemental services. These are the folks that are serving the ads. These are the ones that are layering in third-party data, like a BlueKai. Oracle acquired BlueKai. There's measurement and verification. Snapchat acquired my old company Placed specifically for this. The company before that I worked for, Double Verify, has partnered with a private equity firm in allowing them to just continue to grow and extend their services and really make for a healthier, smarter, more efficient buying ecosystem. The supplementary services, in my opinion, are the most important part of the programmatic ecosystem because it's a brand new marketplace, it's a brand new means of transacting, and you need folks in there that can measure and bring accountability and transparency to a fairly and non-transparent ecosystem. And what's next, as I mentioned a couple times, consolidation. There's going to be a ton of consolidation to continue, whether that's large media companies buying up successful properties or large companies buying up DSPs. Time Inc. went and bought a mobile DSP called Adelphic, and that was strictly for them to start leveraging one of their valuable assets, their unique data set, and then putting it in with a buying mechanism. So really we're going to see continued consolidation, and then from there just more transparency being brought, and then kind of overarching all of that is a bridge of traditional programmatic with traditional media buying, where they're going to kind of meet in the middle. And at some point, I see you won't be able to tell the difference between programmatic and direct media buying. It really is going to be a blend of the two. We already have programmatic guarantees coming out and different mechanisms to leverage the benefits of both sides. And really, at some point, we're just going to have digital media being digital media again and no longer being put in these two buckets. That's it. Thank you very much. And please let us know if you have any questions.